Carolyn Mother with Rappahannock Cablecast Company and Videotaping Service. We're in Old Town Fredericksburg at Arbuckles, and we're going to talk with Teresa Sims, who has completed the Appalachian Trail on December the 15th. Hi.
Good morning.
Why? How did you get involved with hiking the Appalachian Trail?
Well, hiking's always been my hobby, and one of the apex of hiking is to be able to do a through hike of the Appalachian Trail, you know, the beginning, and to do an end-to-end through hike all at one time, and it's something I always wanted to do. So finally I started saving my money up and decided this was going to be the year that I was going to give it a shot, and I did it.
Great. Where's the beginning point, the ending point, and how many miles is it?
Well, it's the total distance is 2,126.5.
2,100?
Yeah, this is it right over here. I started up in Maine and walked to Georgia. Most people start and go the other way. They go from Georgia to Maine because they get perpetual spring. I ended up with perpetual fall. But I started June the 5th up in Maine, and I ended December the 15th. It's a long walk.
How do you go about preparing for such a long walk?
Well, they've got 10 sets of maps. I contacted the Appalachian Trail Conference, got my maps, started reading them. You have to plan mail drops all along the way. Everybody has their own way of doing it, and this is the way I did it. And I had food supplies boxed up, had my maps set up. About every 100 to 150 miles, I'd have my father run to the post office and mail me a certain box. You know, I have box number 1, map number 3, that kind of thing. And then there's gear. You have to get all your gear together, sleeping bags, cold weather gear, warm weather gear, fall. And it took me, I'd say, well, a year and a half of saving my money up to pay all my bills up in advance for 6 months, and then 6 months of some pretty intensive reading maps and getting my food supplies together and talking with my father about how it was going to be done, and getting that, you know, you can prepare as much as you want to, but you can't really work the kinks out until you get out there.
Really?
You know, and decide. Once you start hauling everything up and down mountains, you weed things out pretty quick. You decide exactly what you need and what you don't need.
Did you do this alone?
Well, I started by myself, and I was by myself for 2 months, and then I hooked up with 2 brothers from Boston at the Vermont-Mass line, and we hiked the last 4 months together.
What was your diet like?
I subsisted mostly on some stuff called falafel. It's a vegetable soy protein. You learn how to do all different kinds of things, add gravy, you know. Most of it's instant pasta, though. Noodles, rice, mashed potatoes, oatmeal.
How many miles a day did you try and accomplish?
I would shoot for 15. Sometimes I did more, sometimes I did less, depending on the weather, the terrain, this kind of thing.
Did you have any scary moments on the trail or run into any animals?
Well, most of my scary moments were within the first 2 months when I was by myself, because my biggest fear would be that I would fall. Because when you have 60 pounds on your back and you fall, you hit the ground hard, you know? So when I would fall, I'd be afraid I would hurt myself, twist a knee or an ankle, or do something like that, and I wouldn't be able to walk, and then I have to sit there and just hope somebody comes along, you know? And one of my scariest moments was when I had bought this reconditioned stove before I left. This was in my 3rd week out, and I had hiked into a shelter. Maine is very cold, no matter what time of year it is. I hiked into this shelter, and it was been raining all day, and I was wet, and I got dry, and I set my stove up to make some hot cocoa, and I was sitting in front of it cross-legged, writing a letter, had my stove going, and fuel started to leak onto the tank, and out into the shelter floor. And I wasn't looking, and I didn't notice it, so quite a bit of fuel leaked up. And then it ignited, and when it ignited, it went up in a huge, big rush, you know, whoosh, and up and hit the ceiling, you know, of the shelter and everything, and I panicked, you can imagine, and started slapping the fire out with my hand, like a dummy, you know. And there was another person in there, another southbound through hiker was in there, and he sees me putting the fire out with my hand, and he says to me, "You're going up," because my hand, the fuel got on my hand, it caught on fire. Then I started slapping it on my clothes, trying to get my hand out, you know, and then I ended up getting fuel on my clothes, and my clothes started going up, you know, so a bad situation was rapidly getting worse. Then somebody yelled to me, "Kick it out of the shelter." So I did. I kicked it out of the shelter, and then my hiking companion at the time picked his pad up that we put our sleeping bags on, and he wraps it around me, and then out of the shelter we go and into the mud, into the water, you know. So then, you know, everything was okay, but I was in the middle of Maine with no stove in the pouring rain. I couldn't cook my food, you know. It's kind of hard to build a fire when it's pouring outside, and so I had some trouble there. And then I had my second set of clothes wet, you know. So, and that was a scary moment for me.
I would have quit right then and there. I would have quit. My goodness. What about animals along the way?
There's plenty of them out there. Moose, a lot of moose up in Maine, and I saw a lot of bear, and some bobcats I saw in Virginia here, and then fisher cats up in Maine, and a lot of beautiful wildlife, waterfowl, birds, ducks, geese, Canadian geese. I got to watch them migrate, and that was pretty. But the only ones that give you any problem are the mice. I carried a mouse trap. I used to get a great deal of pleasure out of trapping them by them. Porcupines in Vermont, they like the salt, and you have to hang your boots and your pack and everything, or they'll chew the leather, and they'll chew your backpack up.
Oh, great.
And everything. And they'll come right in the shelter with you. They don't care. You know, you have to keep a stick by and beat them off.
I wonder how many people have accomplished
this year will be 1,000. 1,000 people. Well, I'll probably be somewhere around, like, by the time I write my little dissertation type thing into the trail conference, I'll probably be around 1,015 or something like that. You know.
I don't think too many women are out there.
No.
Hiking, are they?
Not too many women. I think there was 3 of us going south, and I probably met 15. It's picking up a lot. There's a lot more women out there now than there ever used to be. Of course, there was about 15 of them going north, and that's husband and wife teams, and then a couple pairs. I did meet a very interesting woman. She called herself the Mountain Woman. She was 67 years old.
Oh.
I met her in Vermont, and she was coming from Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. You know. And she had done the first section 1 year and was doing the next section. A lot of people do it in sections because they can't get 6 months off. You know, you meet somebody like that who is so determined, you're like, well, you know, you get discouraged and you think, well, she can do it. Well, I can do it too, you know.
Well, you started out alone.
Yeah.
Right?
She was by herself. But she had just paired up with 2 other women who were doing it. She was really interesting.
Well, did you ever get to a point where you really needed something and, you know, that you just didn't have it?
Other than the time when I was in Maine and I didn't have a stove, you know, when it blew up, I had to go through Maine without a stove. But one time we were in Virginia. It was in October, right when we had our first good freeze. It got real cold. First time I had water freeze in my water bottles. We ran out of fuel, you know.
Oh.
And it was cold outside, and you wanted to stop hiking. As soon as it stopped hiking, you wanted a cup of hot tea right then.
Right.
You know, and you had to mess around with a fire. You only run out once. That only happened one time. We didn't do it. It didn't happen to us again. But
what about the people that you met?
Well, I met some pretty interesting people. But a lot of times, AT hikers, as they're hiking, people are really good to you. You know, they want to take you into their homes. They find out what you're trying to do, and they're interested in it, and they want to help you out. You know, do you need a ride somewhere? Are you running out of anything? They want to give you what you have. And I was very skeptical almost all along the way. I didn't want to go into people's homes, mostly because in the beginning I was by myself, and after that I just You know, when I finally got to a town, I wanted my own place. I wanted to spread out in my own place. I'd go to a youth hostel mostly. All my towns I went into, I tried to hit a place with a youth hostel in it. But just at the very end, my partners and I got caught. We got snowed on, and we got caught in an ice storm after several days of rain. So what ended up happening is our sleeping bags were wet, and our clothes were wet, and they froze. All our stuff was frozen, and we were pretty miserable putting on our frozen clothes. So when we got to the next road crossing after that, we had decided to go into a town and dry all our stuff out. And we were going to try to find a motel. One of us had an American Express card. So we got there, and the Catholic Church had a youth group out, and they were hiking the area because it was unusual to have snow, and it was 22 outside, so have that kind of cold weather that early. Mm-hmm. And they met us, and we were quite a sight because we'd been out for a couple of days, and we were frozen. My hair was frozen, you know, and we looked pretty incredible when we came out of the woods. And so they offered us a ride into the next town, which was about 10 miles. And when we finally got there, it was getting dark, and the motel didn't take American Express. Previously, they had offered us a place in their home, and I had talked them into not accepting. I didn't want to. I wanted to stay in my own place. But we were kind of in a spot there, and I said, well, you know, I really appreciated their offer, you know, and I'll beg you to let us still have it, you know. So when we got there, we were exhausted, we were filthy dirty, we were hungry, and it turned out it was a man, and he lived with his parents, and his mother was deaf, and his father was crippled, and their lives were pretty much bound to the home, and they needed pretty bored, you know, with their everyday existence there. And when this guy brought in these three raggedy, filthy, dirty AT through hikers, they took us in with open arms and treated us so good that I'll never forget them. I've written her a letter already that I've finished, and she was incredibly good to me. She couldn't hear people in a room. If there's 4 or 5 people talking, she couldn't hear a thing. So her and I would get off to the side, because, you know, they were all men talking about football all the time, and I wasn't the least bit interested. We would get off to the side, and she made sure I had my shower, and she dried my hair for me, you know, and everything. And it was a really good experience for me. And but it was the only time I ever stayed in somebody's home on my trip, you know, went into their personal home, stayed there. And people were really good to you, though. You know, they were interested in what you were doing and how you were faring and how you were changing. You could really notice that you were changing, because when you live outdoors, you know, 24 hours a day, every day, you don't really notice that you're changing until you go into a town, you know? And suddenly you go into a town, and there's lots of people, and they're really busy, and they're doing this and that and the other, and you suddenly realize how different you're becoming, you know, by observing them. And then you get to a town, okay.
Gain from this wonderful experience?
Well, one of the most important things I gained was when I started this trip, I wanted to be Miss Independence. You know, I wanted to get out there. I had to prove something to myself. And I did. I proved something to myself. You know, I did it by myself for a couple months. But the most important thing I got out of it was hiking with my 2 hiking partners. We were Team America. You know, we were famous on the AT for we were Team America. People knew we were coming when we got there. We were southbound, hiking through in 82, end to end. And we were invincible, you know, because we were always there for each other. We always, you know, we were always helping each other out, you know. If one of us had a candy bar, the other had a candy bar, you know. We were a team, and you can do anything, you know, no matter how bad the day got, no matter how miserable the weather was, or how tired we got. When we were together at the end of the day, we always laughed. We always brought each other's spirits up, you know. And that's the most important thing, and that's something that's important in life itself, you know. That's important in your, you know, even in your job, you have to work as a team. You have to do it together, you know. And you learn a lot about yourself. You spend a lot of time out there by yourself. You think a lot. You think about things that you haven't thought about in years. People, childhood friends. And you learn to accept your own limitations as they are. You know, you have a lot of fantasies and dreams about who you are and what you want to do and what you want to be. And when you get out there, you realize the reality of who you are and what you are, and you have to deal with that and go from there. You have to accept that, period. No, you know, no great physical feats can be made out there. You have to work at them with the base person that you are, your limitations.
No fancy frills on the trail, eh?
No. This is it. This is you, kid. Take it or leave it. You know, that kind of a thing. So, and
I imagine it's a wonderful growth experience.
Yeah. And I spend a lot of time thinking about what I want in life and what I don't want, you know, and I feel like I'm more in tune with that now, you know, and I have more direction. Sometimes you feel like you're going someplace fast and you're not exactly sure where, you know, and now I have a good idea, you know, what I want to do and what I don't want to do and the things that make you happy, because you go through life, you know, none of us are really going to do, maybe, you know, if history presents itself, none of us are really going to do anything that's we're not going to go down in history, we're not going to save anybody's life, we're not going to really be famous for anything, and we're all going to, you know, we're all going to grow old whether we have children or not, and we're all going to, you know, die eventually, and you have to make a decision sooner or later whether, you know, what you're going to do, whether you're going to be happy, what kind of memories are you going to have, are you going to create for yourself, you know, you're going to give yourself bad memories, you know, or are you going to give yourself good memories, you know, things that you can be proud of, you know, I don't know.
How about support? Did you have friends that supported you? I know your father was very supportive, wasn't he?
Yeah, you have to have a support crew. You have to have that person there in civilization who can send you, you know, that pair of winter gloves that you need, or that wool hat that you've got to have when it's freezing outside, you know? You know, so my dad was my right-hand man. He sent me, I wrote him a letter one time. I said, you must be getting sick and tired of running back and forth to the post office, you know? But it wasn't really that bad. He only did it like once or twice a month, so. But he helped me out a lot. And then my job here was very supportive to me. They gave me a very nice bonus, which paid for my plane ticket.
Here at Arbuckles,
yeah,
the people here?
Yeah, my bosses here at Arbuckles gave me a bonus, and it paid for my plane ticket up to Maine to start my trip.
Wow.
And then they wrote me every once in a while. I'd come and they'd have little letters for me, and they were and offered me a job back as soon as I got back.
Wonderful.
You know, immediately. They wanted to put me to work the night I got here. You ready? You know, where's your uniform? And that made me feel really good, because there are times when you're out there, you know, and you're covered with mud and mosquitoes, and you're wondering, what am I doing out here? And you know that there are people behind you, backing you up and supporting you, and it makes you feel good about what you're doing, you know? So that helped a lot, made a big difference.
How about future plans?
Well, I can say that it's in my blood now. And one of the things that I've done by talking to other hikers that I've met along the way, and just books that I've read since I've been back, other hikes. There's a lot of other trails out there, and they're much more difficult. They're much more remote, and their challenges are much greater. There's the Pacific Crest Trail, which runs from Mexico to Canada. Then there's the Continental Divide Trail, which follows the watershed here, runs through Montana and that area. Starts up in Montana and goes down to Mexico through the Grand Canyon. That's really a big one. Not very many people have done that one at all. And I've talked about it with my other partners, you know, and we, you know, a trip like that, they take years to plan, you know, and I think about a lot and what new gear I'm going to get and what's my next big hike. I'd like to do the Continental Divide Trail in 1985, but that's a big dream, you know, that's out there. But, you know, before any of these things become reality, you have to think like that. You have to start actually thinking like that and planning now to be able to do, you know, a long-distance hike like that. You know, that might even take me more than 6 months to do, for sure. You know, maybe I'd do it in a section, you know, just go out for 3 or 4 months and then come back and do it. Because 6 months is a long time, you know.
It surely is.
And
surely is.
And I got homesick, you know. I was eager to be home when I got done.
Well, this was a rewarding experience for me to have the opportunity to talk with you and learn all about it. I've really enjoyed it. It's renewed something in me, and I've really enjoyed the experience of talking.
I'm glad to hear that.
Thanks a lot, Teresa.
You're certainly welcome.
Rates are low, again, and I'll bet many of you are thinking, wonder if I should refinance. This is Teresa Sims from Redwood Capital Bank, and this time around I ask you to make sure you're doing your loan with someone you can look in the eye. People who call me and are in unattractive loans, when asked who put you in this loan, 95% answer, I saw a number on TV, someone called me at home, or they mention a random internet lender. Do not fall prey to a stranger with good telephone skills. It is likely that those people are no longer available to help you unravel the mess. Please, do your loan with someone with skin in the game, a real person you can see. Our kids go to school with your kids. We run into you in the grocery store, and local lenders build their reputation on your future success. Redwood Capital Bank offers local lenders who only recommend loans that make sense for you. Come look us in the eye at our 2 locations in Eureka and Fortuna.
Redwood Capital Bank. Our interest is you. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.